Nobesuthu Hejana giving us a wrap of the events that transpired here in Cape Town, not so far from where we're broadcasting to you from this morning. And all of that starting some 48 hours before this. And to discuss those events just a little bit further, I'm joined by ENCA's Aisha Ismail, who joins us now live. Aisha, Nobesuthu wrapping for us what it will for many Cape Townians be a far too familiar storyline, starting on Thursday in Mitchell's Plain with a man known as Bully Tips, well-known member of the Hard Livings, being killed. And then some 24 hours later, an even better known a member and leader, some would still say, of the Hard Livings, Rashied Staggie, being gunned down in a very calculated fashion, going by that crime scene, over 5 gunshots in a very small grouping through the windscreen of his car, and taking his life very quickly by the looks of it. You are one of the country's most experienced broadcast journalists. This is something that unfortunately you can say you've seen before. What do you make of what we've seen transpire here in Cape Town since Thursday?
Well, that was certainly a brazen attack. The fact that they came in the morning, on a Friday morning, on foot, and they knew exactly what they wanted. They knew exactly what time he was going to get into his car. And they came and they fired several shots. And some would say, some police people that I spoke to yesterday used the term military precision. They wanted him dead. The aim was not just to injure him. They wanted to take him out. And of course, he's not only the leader of the Hard Livings, or wasn't only the leader of the Hard Livings, he was also the founder of the Hard Livings. He founded the Hard Livings with his twin brother, Rashied Staggie. Now, we all know what happened to Rashied Staggie. I mean, way back in 1996, when he was lynched, we saw the members of the People of Gangsterism and Drugs, that organization, rising in the late 1990s precisely to deal with gangsterism and drugs.
Now, that's just the thing. The name Staggie reverberated around the newsroom here, around the city, because it is a surname synonymous with what worldwide is known as one of the most violent gangs in the world, with connections that go across the globe, that underworld that so little really is known of. And it had a lot of people saying, where were you when Rashied Staggie was killed some 23 years ago? I know I was but a journalism student at the time, and that was really a story that got a lot of people talking about various things. The most important thing being, you would have been a working journalist at the time. The position that ordinary members of society found themselves in, that the frustration of living in this gangland where it seemed that law enforcement wasn't making any inroads, and they just decided to take the law into their own hands. And we had the birth of what many believed was a vigilante group known better as Pagat, and that really started a whole new conversation in a country that was just a few years into a new democracy.
That is indeed so, and I clearly remember 1996 when that incident happened. Of course, we didn't have social media at the time, we didn't have cell phones at the time, but I recall that message just spreading like a wildfire that Rashied Staggie had been lynched. They poured petrol on him, they set him alight, and you will recall, Marcel, and I mean, it's also well documented that at the time, the journalists who were on the scene when that happened, or when it just happened, the police were actually trying to use journalists to get information from them. They were saying, you were on the scene literally minutes after it happened. Who did you see there? And they even went as far as to subpoena some journalists to come and give evidence in court. They wanted photographers to hand over their negatives, their photographs, so that they can identify people who were part of that group that lynched Rashied Staggie. Of course, what happened was that the journalists all stood together and they said, no, we're not going to do your work. You need to do the investigations yourself, and you need to make these arrests on your own, based on your intelligence and based on your investigations. And of course, some journalists actually had to go in hiding because they feared, there was fear that the police would come to their homes and raid their homes and find photographs and negatives. But on the other hand, they also feared people from Pagat because at that time there was this message going around that journalists were furnishing the police with information. So journalists got it from both sides.
One of the most chilling things that I do remember of that story and how it unfolded and how quickly it was picked up by the international media. And like you said, before social media, it was broadcast, those very, very traumatic pictures of this gang boss being set alight and then shot on top of that, broadcast across the world. And the one line in all the reports saying, police seemingly just standing by, not doing anything to stop what was happening in front of them. Now, many Cape Townians who would have been around at the time will remember what followed Rashied's death was a period of fear, a period of not knowing what was going to happen. There were revenge killings that took place as this war just spiked out what many believed was out of control. And now, we're coming up to 24 hours after the killing of his twin brother at age 58, Rashied Staggie being gunned down. There's the fear that yet again there's going to be this kind of spike and revenge gang killings.
Exactly, and you're talking about something that happened 23 years ago where people were saying, and you saw the headlines 23 years ago saying police standing back, not able to do anything. Some people will say that's exactly the same that's happening now, 23 years later. The police have not been able to arrest the increase of gangsters. We've seen an increase in gangsterism and drugs, particularly on the Cape Flats. And when you go and talk to people, as we spoke to people yesterday in Mitchell's Plain, for instance, they were saying they are fearing for their lives. They fear that there are going to be revenge killings as a result of Rashied Staggie's death. He was not just a leader of the hard livings, he was also well known, and so people are saying it's like taking the sting out of the bee, and now there are going to be revenge killings. But of course we've also heard from the police that they are on high alerts.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Asha Ismail will be our person on top of things over the next few hours as we broadcast, especially for you, live from Cape Town this morning in the special edition of This Weekend. Aisha will be making her way back to that crime scene. Many just know it as London Road in Salt River. There's a community around there, but known because that is what I suppose flippantly in the world of Hollywood we would call the Staggie compound. Everybody knows that is their home, that is where they live. They can point out where the house is, and Aisha will eventually be making her way back there, and we'll be bringing the very latest to you about how that community is feeling just almost 24 hours since another very, very public, let's call it assassination of Rashied Staggie, well-known former, or some say still very active boss of the Hard Livings gang. And we'll bring you the very latest on that.